Jan Michael Greenberg.
Sandy Kravitz.
Barbara Perleberg.
Allison Beckham.
Patty Beckman. Okay. All board members are present, and we do have a quorum. All rise. Board Member Beckham, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I motion to convene into executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431.03 and 3, discussion or consultation for legal advice with the outside attorney for the district concerning the performance evaluation of the district's general counsel. And also pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A and 1, discussion or consideration of the performance evaluation of the district's general counsel. The employee has been notified in compliance with the statute. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
We are convened in executive session. Okay, I motion to adjourn our executive session. Do I have a second?
Second?
Board Member Perleberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Executive session is adjourned. Our special meeting is reconvened at 5:08 p.m. And I also motion to adjourn our special meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Special session is adjourned. I now call to order this regular meeting and public hearing of the Scottsdale Unified School District on the adoption of the fiscal year 2018-2019 expenditure budget revision number 1. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.02 and ARS 15-905 D and E. It is May 14th and the time is 5:09 p.m. Please stand. Board Member Beckham, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will have a roll call starting from my far right.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Sandy Kravitz.
Barbara Perleberg.
Allison Beckham.
And Patty Beckman. All board members are present, and we do have a quorum. We move now to our public hearing on adoption of the fiscal year 2018-2019 expenditure budget revision 1. Mr. Gadd?
Madam President, members of the board, this is an annual occurrence that all districts are required to amend their current year adopted budget to reflect the actual average daily membership through the 100th day. And we have a PowerPoint to give you some of the highlights of the revision that you're being asked to wrong one. Debbie, where are you? Okay. What do I need to do? Which one are you trying to look for? I'm trying to look for the M&O, the budget revision. Very good. Thank you. Well, I'm glad you're there. Okay. This summarizes for you the changes that predominantly are being made in the budget. You can see that the original estimate was for a loss this year of 253 students, average daily membership. The actual loss turned out to be 641. So there's another 388 students that we lost in membership. They're indicated by grade level. As you know from the demographic study that the district has done on more than one occasion, it's occurring all at the elementary level, and so that will funnel up through the high school sooner or later. The changes that are reflected in the budget that we're asking you to approve this evening start out with this M&O budget, which is being revised downward by $1.8 million to reflect the additional loss of ADM. We're going to absorb that amount through attrition, and I've mentioned that to the board a few times where the economy is good and unemployment is low, and so we have lots of positions that we are unable to fill, and that generates a surplus in the budget. There is an increase in the capital outlay budget, which comes about from a revision of the state's budget reduction. You'll recall that that has been an ongoing budget reduction for a number of years, now being restored gradually. Federal projects, we estimate when we file the budget the dollar amount that we expect to receive. We estimated low, and so we're fortunate in that we have received more than we estimated by $1.1 million. And the same thing with state projects. That amount is large, and it's due primarily to the governor adding funding for results-based education and college credit exam incentive. So those are the changes that we are requesting that you approve in the 18-19 budget revision number 1. Any questions, we'll try to answer them for you.
Okay, do I have any public comments on the proposed budget revision number 1? Sandra, do I have all the cards? Yes, you do. Okay. Okay, there are no requests for public comment on the budget revision number 1. Are there any further questions or discussion on the adoption of fiscal year 2018-2019 expenditure budget revision number 1? Board Member Beckham.
Thank you, Mr. Gadd. I just have a real quick question. Since this says it's revision 1, is there a revision 2, or do we just go to adoption of a final budget in June?
We'll just go, revision number 1 will finish 18-19. Sometimes there is a revision 2 if the budget was both revised in December and again in May. You have to revise in December if your budget is significantly different than what you had filed the prior July. But we did not get impacted by that. So this is the final budget through 1 revision only for the 18-19 fiscal year.
So we will not be approving a final budget in June, like typically?
This is the final budget for the current year. You will next approve a proposed budget for next year.
In June?
Uh-huh.
Okay, they're
Yes, ma'am.
separate. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve action item 4A, the adoption of fiscal year 2018-19 expenditure budget revision 1?
Second.
So
Who
moved.
motioned?
so
Wait,
moved.
who
So
motioned?
moved.
Board Member Greenberg makes the motion. Board Member Beckham, did you second?
Second.
Board Member Beckham seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
passes 5-0. Okay, I make a motion to adjourn our public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Perleberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Okay, we move now to our regular meeting. Again, we will have a roll call starting from my right.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Sandy Kravitz.
Barbara Perleberg.
Allison Beckham.
And Patty Beckman. All board members are present, and we do have a quorum. Do any board members have any changes to the agenda? Board Member Beckham.
Yes, I would like to pull item under the consent agenda. In authorization to award Coronado High School Carlisle roof warranty replacement project.
Did you get, Board Member Beckham pulls from consent agenda item N, authorization to award Coronado High School Carlisle roof warranty replacement project. And I need to pull, we have a second one here, consent agenda item 12S, personnel action item. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'm sorry, what item are you pulling?
Consent agenda item.
Which item?
Personnel action item. It's a separation F.
F, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I heard S, okay. Sorry.
Okay. Do I have a motion to
Wait,
approve?
I have.
Board Member
my-
Kravitz.
Sorry, I had requested a change. I'd like to flip item 10. I'd like to put B, what is currently B, first before A. Under
Okay.
information discussion items.
So, Board Member Kravitz would like to modify information and discussion items. She would like to hear item B, financial regulations on carry-forward balances, before item A, possible maintenance and operations override election for November 5th?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Board Member Perleberg moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. We now call on Dr. Creekard. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
passes 5-0. We now call on Dr. Creekard to present our students and staff recognitions and celebrations.
President Beckman, members of the board. We're going to do things a little differently today since I have just... Try that again. Is it better? No? It says it's on.
Is your green button on the mic? The little button on your mic too.
Yeah, now it's...
Ah. I won't make any comment about my age and the technology involved in certain positions. President Beckman, members of the board, we're going to do things a little differently today since I've dispatched Dr. Sackos to another event on my behalf. We expect her to join us later. Therefore, I will be doing the celebrations today, so if you'll excuse me while I go to the podium to introduce you to some outstanding young people and their outstanding achievements. Good evening, Mrs. Beckman, members of the board, Sandra. At the last governing board meeting, this is the last governing board meeting the school is in session for. It is our tradition in SUSD to recognize members of this year's graduating class who have received appointments to U.S. military academies. So I would like the following students and their principals to join me here up front. From Arcadia High School, Nicholas Bourgeois and Carter Murphy with Principal Todd Stevens. From Desert Mountain High School, Michael Dankworth and Steve Florence with their principal, Dr. Lisa Hirsch. From Saguaro High School, Clayton Randall and Principal Ann Oxiger. When it comes to accepting recruits into the 6 U.S. military academies, only young men and women of the highest character and achievement are sought. Such is the case with our class of 2019 recruits. Each of these students carries with them a record of excellent academic achievement in the classroom, even in their senior year, taking the most challenging of courses. Just today, several of them took the advanced placement calculus tests, while others have other AP tests later this week. Some of these students have excelled on fields of competition and have proudly represented their schools and SUSD on basketball courts, soccer pitches, football fields, and in the water. They are outstanding contributors to their school communities and to the community at large and represent the very best of our high school graduates. Let me tell you just a little about each of them. Nick Bourgeois, thank you, has attended SUSD schools for his entire public education career, starting at Kiva Elementary, moving to Ingleside Middle School, and these last 4 years at Arcadia. Nick will play soccer for the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and has played for the Titans all 4 years at Arcadia, in addition to playing for a local club soccer. He must be pretty good, too, as he's part of the U.S. Olympic Development Team. Thank you. Nick is completing his high school career with such challenging classes as AP Calculus, College English, and Biotechnology. He also helps tutor fellow Arcadia students. Carter Murphy. Carter has been an outstanding shooting guard for the Arcadia Titans and will take the court for the U.S. Air Force Falcons in the fall. He also received an offer to go to U.S. Military Academy at West Point, but has chosen the Air Force. Carter also volunteers along with his parents with Boys Team Charity, a Phoenix volunteer service organization that assists such local charitable organizations as Andre House and St. Mary's Food Bank. Carter's appointment comes through Senator Kirsten Sinema's office. Carter attended elementary school at Hopi. Moving to Desert Mountain High School, Michael Dankworth. Michael has been planning to attend U.S. Military Service Academy since 5th grade and has chosen the Merchant Marine Academy located in Kings Point, New York, and will pursue a degree in marine engineering and shipyard management. Known for its rigorous academic program, the USMMA experience is augmented by the Academy's Sea Year experience, which affords midshipmen the opportunity to acquire hands-on, real-world experiences working aboard commercial vessels sailing to ports around the world. Upon graduation, he will be able to accept a commission from any of the U.S. military branches. Michael is an Eagle Scout and has a black belt in karate. He is another complete SUSD product, having attended Cheyenne and Desert Mountain. Stephen Florence. Stephen is headed to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. He is another total SUSD representative, having attended Desert Canyon Elementary and Middle Schools and Desert Mountain High School. Like most of his compatriots here today, Stephen has not been resting on his laurels during his senior year. He is taking very challenging courses such as AP Chemistry 2, Calculus 3 Differential Equations, and AP English 4 Literature and Composition. He has represented the Desert Mountain swim team for the past 4 years, but will hang up his goggles. The Florences are about to become a two-time military family, with Stephen's older brother having just received an appointment to the Air Force Academy. Tanner Falls was not able to join us this afternoon, but he is headed soon to the U.S. Military Academy, also called West Point, where he will swim for the Black Knights. Tanner exemplifies the U.S. Army motto, duty, honor, country, and we wish him well. Lastly, from Saguaro High School, this gentleman may look familiar to you as he has been part of celebrations of SaberCat state football titles the past 4 years. Clayton Randall is known as a fearsome and fearless linebacker and served as one of the team's captains this past season, one of the highest compliments a football player can receive from his peers. He also plays baseball, but no matter on which field he sets foot, he is respected by the Saguaro peers, coaches, faculty, and staff alike. He takes pride in his academic path too, taking honors and AP classes while juggling his sports commitments. He is a natural leader and an outstanding role model. As you may know, military academy appointments come with all expenses paid college education. But in accepting the appointments, these students are accepting the stipulation that they will serve in their respective service branches for 5 years. Somehow I think the nation gets better and better at the end of that arrangement. Please join me in congratulating this group of fine young men. We know that success will find you. Congratulations. Yeah, I'll do the other one first, so come right back. Next, I would like to call up Arcadia High School theater teacher Richard Fairchild and Principal Stevens as soon as his picture is taken with his academy recruits. You can fill in. Thank you, Cheryl. Ah, he's here.
Well, you stay. Come on.
If you have been fortunate to have attended a theater production at Arcadia High School over the past 16 years, now you know why. Richard Fairchild is behind Arcadia student-centered productions involving students in nearly every aspect, including naming students as show directors. From helping choose what goes on stage, and what the set, lighting, and sound designs are, Richard is the overall producer. His goal is to have students leave his classroom and Arcadia Theater with a different view of the world and a better appreciation for the entertainment industry and the art they see. For using his imagination to inspire creativity in his classrooms and on stage, Richard has been named one of the 3 recipients of the 2019 Educational Theater Association's Inspirational Theater Educator Award. He encourages theater students to give their best while staying true to themselves, and they do. Congratulations, Richard. Our last celebration this evening brings us to another Desert Mountain High School student, junior Cameron Smith. Cameron, please join your principal, Dr. Hirsch, and me at the podium. She's not here.
Yeah, she's
here. Cameron, what? She's coming. Cameron, too, comes to us from the fine arts world of dance. Cameron has been dancing since she was about 2 years old. Just yesterday, I'm sure, to her parents. She has studied all dance types, from lyrical and ballet to hip-hop and jazz, and is a mainstay of the Desert Mountain Desert Dance Company. She has taken part in exclusive dance training opportunities with the Joffrey Ballet and has performed at Disneyland, Phoenix Suns, and Arizona Diamondbacks games, as well as in recitals and competitions. When she's not dancing, she's learning and studying such challenging courses this year as AP Language and Composition, Spanish 4 Honors, and AP Calculus. She is a leader, too, serving as the co-president and co-publicist this school year of the dance team, the job of which includes planning and organizing events around the Desert Mountain Dance Program and writing and delivering opening speeches at each dance concert. She also helps teach ballet at a local dance school to 7 to 10-year-olds. Lastly, Cameron has been nominated for Best Dancer for her performance in the school's spring musical, Chicago, in the annual Arizona High School Musical Awards coming up on May 25th at ASU. Lisa Noriega is her teacher. And have I left anything out?
Just the name of the award she won.
The name of the award, Arizona's Artistic Merit Leadership and Academic Achievement Award for demonstration of artistic and technical excellence in dance, leadership in the field of dance, and academic achievement. Congratulations, Cameron. Thank you. So in closing, congratulations to all of those young people and the teachers that are involved. We're extremely proud of your accomplishments and know that there are many more ahead. This concludes today's celebrations, and so now I'll head back to my usual post to deliver my monthly comments.
Okay, we now call on Dr. Creekard to deliver his superintendent's comments.
Thank you, President Beckman, members of the board, and thank you, Dr. Creekard, for those wonderful comments. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce to everybody a person that we have in the audience that we are very appreciative of his attendance here in his very, very busy life. Mr. Aaron Lieberman, our state representative from LD 28. And he is politicking. I would like to note that last week was National Teacher Appreciation Week, and we want to thank all of our hardworking and dedicated teachers for what they do every day in our classrooms. Were it not for our teachers, we would not exist. Were it not for our teachers, the excelling students we have celebrated today, and our thousands of others in the wings would not aspire to the great things that they do. So thank you, teachers, for what you do every day. We appreciate it so much. So entering is Mr. Aaron Lieberman, State Representative. In March, we celebrated Hopi Principal Tamara Jagodzinski in her nomination as Maricopa County Exemplary Principal. If you read or saw the news last week, you'll know that Tamara has been named one of the county's 11 exemplary principals by County Superintendent Steve Watson. Unfortunately, or unbelievably, her entire school of 800 students and her staff kept that a secret and managed to surprise her at a school assembly. Our hats are off to Mrs. J, as she is called in the Hopi community, for her outstanding leadership and the accomplishments of her student and staff. As you well know, we have the finest building services and facilities team around, maintaining our schools and athletic fields. As it turns out, we are not alone in recognizing that. The American Sports Builders Association recently honored the Saguaro High School Stadium with its 2018 Track and Field Facility Silver Award for excellence in design and construction. This is a tremendous honor in the construction community and illustrates one of the great accomplishments of SUSD Facilities Director Dennis Rayler and his team. Congratulations and thank you. In 16 days, we will celebrate SUSD's 1,900-strong class of 2019 as they receive their diplomas and conclude their high school careers. We wish them all the luck in the world and know they are taking a great education with them, no matter where they go, and a supportive system of teachers, parents, and friends who have contributed to their success. Lastly, I would like to note that today is the one-year anniversary of my coming to this district in this position. Seems longer. But it has been a great honor for me and a privilege to serve SUSD and its community. I look forward to our continued collaboration over the next year so that when I hand over this post to the next superintendent, we are arming him or her with a healthy, thriving organization that continues to excel and is a district of choice in our local education community because of our respectful behavior, our professionalism, our treating parents as partners, and because our absolute belief that this is about kids and their future. We all do this because we know that what we do is a stake in the future of our country, of our community, and there is no greater calling than to serve the future through our kids. I thank all of you who are SUSD employees and all of you who are SUSD community members supporting the school district and above all, the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Creekard, for your wonderful comments. We will now move to our agenda item 10, our information and discussion items, and we will begin with B, financial regulations on carry forward balances. Mr. Gadd.
You recall on April 16th, we did a fairly extensive presentation to you about a request that you made to identify dollar values that would reflect minimums and maximums for both budget and cash controlled funds. We have put those into a regulation format, which is enclosed with your board agenda, along with some examples that anyone reading this, I think, would be able to follow pretty well in terms of being able to finish or to complete the requirements that are in the regulation. So with that, with your understanding, I shouldn't say action, with your understanding tonight, we would include this as a regulation with policy DB in our policy manual.
Are there any questions for Mr. Gadd on our regulations, the financial regulations on the carry forward balances? Board Member Greenberg?
Thank you again. I will support this. I rewatched the comments at the last meeting, and it seemed that the CFO and the accounting department were fine with this document being implemented as a regulation, as long as, we understood it was flexible, which seemed to be the understanding that the board had. My only personal comment that I want to make it very clear to the public and anyone who was watching that, to the best of my knowledge, at no time were any of these amounts hidden from the board, from me, from anybody from the public. They're reported each year in what is known as the annual financial report. That's the actual expenditure, actual carry forward, actual figures. They're all set out by account type. This governing board, at the end of that year when the report is due, has to vote to approve it. We have to sign it. I think the board president signs it twice. So I don't want anyone to get the impression that somebody somewhere in the past or in the present has ever tried to hide these figures from us. They are there. They're reported to the Arizona Department of Education. So I just want to make that very clear and not confuse the record.
Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. Any further questions? Board Member Beckham?
Yes, thank you. On this regulation, I have two comments. If I was reading it, one of the things that I asked myself is, who determines these amounts? So I'm wondering if we can include who determines the amounts, whether there's a minimum and a maximum. It can be anywhere between those.
I suppose you could specify that the finance department, the district finance department expresses these as minimum maximums. Just to follow up on what Mr. Greenberg had to say, you have to really understand that these funds are cash control funds that we're primarily dealing with, sensitive to balances and sensitive to long-term sustainability. That's just an editorial comment, I guess, on my part, that it's extremely important that you do that. But in terms of who establishes those, these are been established by the finance department and at your direction and are here for your information. If we find any of these to be an issue in practice later on, we will be back to tell you that we do, and I think in the regulation itself, if we're going to exceed either a maximum or a minimum, we report that to you, and you will see these funds appear again when we deal with not next year's budget, but the year after probably. So that's best I can answer your question, Ms. Beckham.
So I just want to, my questions are for clarification. So if, for instance, if it is between the minimum and the maximum when it comes to budget time, there will be no reference to what was actually chosen as far as a percentage. It will just be in that budget. And the only way that the governing board would be notified is if that recommended carry forward was either below the minimum carry forward in the regulation or above the maximum. Otherwise, there's no formal discussion, there's no formal notification to the governing board. Is that, because that's how I'm reading it, I just don't know if that's the intent.
The intent would be when we present to you a preliminary budget, we will, if we use some of these funds to do that balancing, that we will let you know, we'll put a footnote so that you know what the range is, same range that we're talking about here, as a percentage of that year's revenue and expenditures. We will not be recommending a budget to you that goes below the minimum indicated here. We believe that is as low as we want to go. If it's somewhere in the range, you will see where it's at in the range by us reflecting what the range is. If it's above the range, we'll have that footnoted. So you'll know where things are, because we have as much sensitivity to these funds as you do about making sure that they are not overly estimated in terms of resolving issues and then expected later on to continue that sustainability.
So as I want to make sure that I understand that, so what I would expect is that in the next, it's not going to be in the next budget, but the budget after that, you said?
Right.
That there would be a footnote that under, just pick one, Capital Fund 610 and 611, you're going to have a little footnote that says the carry forward was 35% of the revised budget. Okay. So my concern is not so much, it always seems that the people that put this in place know the intent, but that is, maybe that should be footnoted, because then if the people in the department change, I want to make sure that they know what the responsibility is. So that might be noted, that the percentages will be noted in the budget to the governing board as well.
Okay. Any further questions? Board Member Perleberg?
Thank you. And I'm just going to add a very brief footnote regarding the past. I would suggest that anyone in our community really want to go back and understand why many of us are grateful to have this document, go back to board meetings and even speak to honest members of the budget committee at that time in 2012, 2013, 14, following 2 lost overrides. And you can watch those conversations and judge for yourself where we were as a district. So once again, very grateful for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? I, too, will thank you for this. I know I want to speak to a piece of it, if you can, please. And that is, I know a lot of people have questions about, is your min-max is established. And currently, you would have an overage or an unencumbered amount over. How would you use that, or what could you use it for? I know you had defined it. You had taken $2 million, I believe, in this budget. And then you talked about potentially offsetting some other M&O expenses. One of them being, for instance, this year we used 6% to offset the premium increase for our medical. How would you use that unencumbered amount going forward?
Every year produces different circumstances. The important thing is that I think that you are conservative with using these guidelines when you're recommending budgets to the board. And fortunately, we have some guidelines, and fortunately, we're in a position to make sure that you understand before we recommend a budget to you exactly how we feel about how extensive the uses are of cash-controlled and encumbered M&O funds. I'm comfortable with these guidelines. I am not comfortable with anything less as a balance than what's reflected here. And you will not see a recommendation from me, nor would I not tell you that I disagree significantly with approving a budget that's below these guidelines. You will run into trouble sooner or later, that's a guarantee. So that's, I don't know if Madam President, answered your question very well, probably not, but it's just every year you take a look at where you're at, the deficit. The use of these funds is important because it minimizes the need for us to reduce program. And that's why it's important to use them, but wisely. Don't overdo it. There's a limit as to how far these funds can support things. And when you reach that limit, I'll be the first to tell you, and then after that, it's going to be probably some unpleasant reductions that you might have to deal with. But that's just, we at least can say to the taxpayers, we've used all of our resources in the best and most prudent way that we know how. And then program becomes affected. So, that's a speech, I guess, but I mean, that's as best I can do with what I think your general question was. Maybe I didn't get it right.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Greenberg.
Thank you for that. And I think we all agree, I hope, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think we all agree that we have a lot of cash on hand that we can spend and use in a more prudent manner, and maybe boost some projects that we want done and improve education outcomes and education opportunities for all students. I just going on what Mr. Gadd said, I actually this weekend I pulled those AFR reports and I ran the numbers myself, and for example, just as one example, back in the 2013-2014 time, if we spent every dime that we had in the non-restrictive cash accounts to cover the loss of the M&O at that time, the M&O override. So in the first year, we would have had a gap of $6.5 million, and in the second year, we would have had a gap of $13 million. And if we pulled those funds just from the non-restrictive cash accounts, into there, we would have burned through everything in a year and 8 months. So it is important, as Mr. Gadd said. I think, that's why this makes sense, because we can't just do that and pull everything over. So if that kind of gives context to how this money can be burned through so quickly, especially if you have an M&O override that's phased out, I think that's very good context. Thank you, Mr. Gadd.
Board Member Beckham.
Thank you for the comments, too. I will say that maybe the answer to your question is not based upon the carry forward regulation, but really when we have that discussion about the unencumbered amount is like when we go into the next discussion, which is budget. And so maybe that is the reason why it couldn't be answered, because it's really not dealing with this regulation, because the regulation's only dealing with those parameters. It's not dealing with what would be unencumbered and available to actually use towards student services and students. So that would come with the budget question, a discussion. And every year, I believe that would be with the budget question. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Gadd? Thank you.
Any further questions on this, on B, financial regulations on carry forward balances? Okay, we move now to A, possible maintenance and overrides, or possible maintenance and operations override election for November 5th, 2019.
Madam President, members of the board, I think you all are aware that the district will be in its 5th year next year of a 15% maintenance and operations override. For those of you who may not have a lot of familiarity with that subject, it allows the district to exceed its revenue control limit, its calculated formula amount for M&O by 15%. That calculated formula amount, if it goes up, the 15% gives us more money. If it goes down, as ours has been going down because of declining enrollment, the amount generated by the revenue will go down accordingly. So it's always a percentage of the formula and not simply a dollar amount that stays fixed each year. It fluctuates. One of the things that we need to understand is that is a continuation of an election that was authorized by the voters in November of 2014. It's an authorization that would come to us next November and be effective July 1st, 2020, and expire June 30th, 2025. So it is a 5-year authorization for a full 15%. If you are not successful in passing the election, then it will ratchet down by 5% per year until it expires. So it will become 10% in year 6, 5% in year 7, and 0 in year 8. The current tax rate is extremely low. Extremely low. It is only 37 cents of our $3 plus tax rate relative to this entire amount that we're discussing, which is $19.5 million of additional funding for the district's maintenance and operations budget. It is the lowest I have ever seen in my career, and so is the tax rate, the lowest I've ever seen in my career. It's been a fairly long one, and I've been in a lot of different places. You're extremely fortunate here. And I told you this before, I think. You're extremely fortunate in having very low taxes. Your tax rate, as you will see in a minute, is roughly half of anybody else's. So if you're a homeowner in this district, you will be benefited immensely by having not only very high quality schools, but paying the least in the East Valley and in the Central Valley for that privilege. So moving on a little bit with that subject, this is a comparison of the current tax rates for the unified districts that you see on the screen. Scottsdale's total tax rate is $3.70 per $100 of assessed valuation. The primary is basically the district's operating budget. The secondary is typically defined as those items approved by voters. So the secondary would consist of the M&O override and bond elections, and just recently, legislatively, it has added the desegregation fund. Those are the 3 funds that are contained in the secondary amount. But as I said earlier, if you go down this listing, you know, you're very fortunate. I mean, and it's not just by a little bit that you're fortunate. It's by a whole lot that you're fortunate in having a tax rate that's extremely attractive to anybody that I know of. So that's by having said that, I guess my reason for saying that is that I really think that the taxpayers have a wonderful deal with what they pay, $19 million, program, student achievement that they already have. You couldn't be in a better position. So I would encourage you to stay there because it doesn't get any better than this. Purpose. The purpose statements that are bullet pointed here are those that could potentially wind up in the voter pamphlet. It'll be depending upon what you decide to approve on the June 11th board meeting, at which time there will be a resolution for you to consider in terms of the election. Current class sizes would be maintained. We would maintain all-day kindergarten. Remember, the state only funds half of kindergarten with a 0.5 ADM. We would continue the music and art, athletics, languages that you see there. Emphasis on technology, especially with the IT staff. Professional learning, the continuation basically of the district's professional development program. And then, importantly, competitive teacher compensation. That last item, as you know, is extremely important because of the shortage that we have with teachers, and districts win that game more so than others if they have a more than competitive salary because they have obviously something that's attractive to new teachers who have student loans and all kinds of other obligations to pay for. So starting salaries become important. This is the phase out if the district were not successful in passing, reauthorizing that election. We would lose $6.5 million each one of these 3 years beginning in 2021. And if we attempted it all 3 times and lost all 3 times, then that collective amount would be the $19.5 million that you previously saw on the slide. This, I know it's difficult to read this, but this is from the county and puts forth the calendar. Calendar is not very flexible. It requires the governing board to make decisions and provide things to them with certain dates in mind. And that's why we wanted to present to you early the facts connected with the overrides so that we could have that discussion prior to some of these dates coming about. You see the election day, which is 4th line up from the bottom. That is the November 5th date that we are discussing. To bring this down to a more understandable level, the information that you're getting tonight is intended to give you an opportunity to ask questions and for us to bring back to you information that you may believe that you need. There is a resolution which is required, and June 11th is roughly the last day, if you go back to that detailed calendar, that we can provide that notification to the county. I'm sure that if I told them that there was a strong intent to do the election, they might be satisfied with that for a short period of time, but that resolution is something that they want to have in hand. The August 8th is pro statements. The board is authorized to produce a pro statement that would be contained in the election pamphlet, no longer than 200 words, and it's required to be submitted to them by August 9th. That would mean then that the first meeting in August that the board has would be a place that we would give you a draft pro statement for you to edit and approve and then move it on to the county. The pamphlet itself is something that we would show you on August 20th or again whatever date in August the board meeting is scheduled for. And it's required for you to indicate to the county any changes you think are necessary in the pamphlet by August 27th that you think are inaccurate or don't reflect what you think is necessary. So I think that's basically it. I would point out to you that this district is going to be likely incurring some declining enrollment in the future if you look at the demography study that you had earlier. That, coupled up with a relatively low inflation rate, which will probably be back in the 2% range again, will likely give you very little, if any, new funds for next year because the declining enrollment potentially offsets the amount that you get for inflation. That leaves you almost with no growth in the budget in which to deal with whatever you think are higher priorities. If you couple this item with that, then the severity of the issue becomes much, much greater. Now you're starting with a position of $6.5 million negative and trying to work your way out of that. At the same time, you have this list of things that you would like to do that represents additional resources, and you can put those two together. And once you add those two together, you will find whatever the dollar amount is that you need to reallocate resources within the current budget. So it gets exasperated significantly by not having these funds available. Now remember, we're not talking about this coming year. We're talking about a year after this year. But having been in places where the override has not been successful, it has been painful. And the items that were contained in the override in previous election templates were addressed directly with the thought that that's what the voters authorized, and if you're not authorizing it, then those items get affected, and they were affected, and they were affected significantly so. And I guess that's to send the message, but it's also to keep credibility with the voters who said, this is what we want. Now we say we don't want it, and so therefore that resource is extracted. Now I don't think there's legally necessarily that you have to do that, but I do think from a credibility standpoint, most districts do follow those bullet points relative to what they're going to concentrate their reduction list on. So with that, members of the board, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Board Member Greenberg.
Mr. Gadd, thank you very much for that presentation. I think, the one page I really liked was the purpose page. You know, what is this funding for and what we're doing with it? And I thank Board Member Kravitz for actually suggesting we reverse that order of the discussion items, because I think, I think everyone in this district and on this board, we all have ideas of, what we could be using the cash we do have to improve our programs and maybe offer new programs and improve. And, having looked at these numbers and kind of done a rudimentary, trajectory of what it would look like, I just don't think we will have that really quite cool opportunity to investigate some of those if we're also having to deal with declining enrollment, that could affect our M&O. As well as, then we get a $6.5 million hole and then a $13 million hole. So I think, that purpose and saying, not only are we going to be, trying to achieve that with an M&O override, but also, we have these additional resources we want to put into this, I think is a very good position to be in and to be going to voters with.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Board Member Beckham.
Thank you very much for that. I have just a couple of questions, not actually with what you've said, but to carry it forward a little bit. There always seems to be some confusion when we do overrides or passing a bond as to what the role of the governing board is and what the role of the administration is. And so I wonder if you could talk about that. I know from the presentation, the role of the governing board is to make an approval, or if they're going to make an approval in June, then they have some requirements that the state deprises. Then we have this time period between November. So in that time period, what is the role of the governing board and the role of the administration? Or is there any? And then I guess that adds in the confusing part, I think, is that there typically has been a PAC that then goes out and markets this. And that relationship of the PAC to either the governing board and the administration. So if you could speak to it.
Madam President, Ms. Beckham, I will try to give you some general thoughts about that subject you asked about. It's up to the administration to make a recommendation to the board, which we intend to do, to approve a resolution. And that requires board action, and I think you know from what's already been presented what the consequences are of that. Once that election is called, once that resolution is approved, by statute, the district is precluded from using any of its resources in which to support the election. So at that point in time, any support would need to come from an external group or someone not using resources for the district. That's where the PAC would generally come into play. Most districts use a PAC in which to get the word out. The district can provide factual information, as it does with putting things out on the counters at schools and flyers and all of those kinds of things. It simply cannot take a position in terms of how one should vote. So the PAC can take a position, because that's not a district resource-based item, and can, and as obviously they do, express their opinion about why the district should pass that election. I think it's up to the administration you want to be positive about needing to continue what we are already doing, rather than being negative, I think. Rather than trying to scare people into voting yes or whatever you might do, it's important to tell them these are all of the things that we're doing and doing right with your money, and it's evidence in our student achievement, and we want to continue that. That's really important for us to make sure that you know what that looks like, and it's in those flyers. And those flyers will be coming to you, one-pagers usually, that try to highlight the tax implication, what we're spending the money on, why that should continue. At least I shouldn't say why it should continue, the result that it has. We believe in student achievement. So that's our role. Your role, obviously, is we hope that you will be positive and supportive of the election, as we are. We're hopeful that you will be supportive of the PAC, especially when you're not serving in a governing board capacity. Your role with the PAC can be whatever you want your role with the PAC to be, just as they can be whatever they want to be. And so if we have board members who might choose to want to participate in the PAC, we would love to have that happen, because obviously the community looks to you as their elected representatives to give them some guidance about what they should do relative to asking the district or for more resources. So, that's a general overview, but that's, I think, what should happen.
That's great. I think that helps to clarify for the community. And you mentioned, so one last question. You mentioned after the decision's made, there's no resources. But up front, there is a minimum amount of resources, because we pay for the pamphlets at the actual election.
Yes.
But that is typically a minimal amount, is that correct? And what is the source of those funds?
It is the district's M&O budget. And
Just the general fund?
And those are minimal. The big expense is the ballot mail-in process. It no longer will be a voter election in terms of having polling places. That has gone by the wayside. Everything now is mail-in. And so you need to recognize with that October, the month of October, is extremely important, because that's when those mail-in ballots are out there, and that's when they're coming back in. If you're thinking that you want to wait until the election day to do it, you're probably way late with influencing most voters, because they've already chosen to send their ballot in. That is governed by the county, and it's relatively expensive. It can be as high as $2 a registered voter. So that is something that it covers their mailing costs and some other things, their election expenses. It may be even more expensive than when we had polling places and you paid polling workers, but it is what it is. And it is not small. It could be $100,000 to $200,000. I haven't priced it out, but it could be in that range when you take their pricing structure and apply it to the number of registered voters we have, because we have a very high number of registered voters. The other expenses like translation and printing and some of those things, they're pretty minor compared to that mail-in ballot process.
I just want to be very transparent.
And it's
with
an
our
M&O
voters.
budget expense.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Kiefer?
Mr. Gadd, because City of Scottsdale will also have a bond issue on that election, is there any sharing of the election costs, because they will be on the ballot as well?
I don't know. That's one of the things that we need to talk to them about. and need to talk to county elections even more so about whether there's any savings for the two of us to kind of join together in that process. Hopefully there is. You would think that there probably would be, but we'll find out. They have three bond questions, as I understand it, all of which are relative to the infrastructure for the most part and some parks. So they're very basic, and that helps us because most people would view those, I think, as pretty necessary kinds of items.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Gadd? No? Okay, thank you. That was
You're
great.
welcome.
Okay, we now move to public comments. Sandra, do I have all the cards submitted? Yes, you do. Okay. All right. In conformance with open meeting laws, the governing board may not discuss or take action tonight on any matters raised during public comments that are not on the agenda. However, the governing board may respond to direct criticism, ask staff to review the matter, or ask that it be placed on a future agenda. As a reminder, each speaker will have 3 minutes. Our screen will indicate the time with a 30-second warning from Vice President Beckham. Please be prepared to close your comments and relinquish the floor at the conclusion of your time. We do ask that each speaker introduce themselves for clarity in the records, and we thank you for your time and your attendance here tonight and your cooperation in following the meeting protocols. And our first speaker is Nancy Cantor.
Everything I want to talk about is on the agenda tonight. Maintenance and override, it's going to be critically important that we educate the voters. The difference between a maintenance and override and the city's bond. Anytime we've had anything like that on the ballot, the voters are confused. They need to know this is a continuation, this is not new taxes. This is very important. CSI initiative. It's also important to remember that the CSI initiative was not brought here to be an overnight solution to the problems in the Coronado complex. Yeah, it was a beginning. So was creating the K-8 at Tonalea. It was not supposed to stay that way. We needed to have the program begin and provide interventions, which it did. Those interventions need to continue, and I know Dr. Hagigat has a beautiful program she's instituting in elementary, and the next step is being taken. This all came about because of a large amount of neglect of the Coronado complex for almost 10 years. So it's moving forward, thank God. And I appreciate Dr. Creekard's dedication to making that happen. Finally, the last thing I'm going to say, and I can talk pretty fast, the last thing I'm going to say is, if it wasn't for good teachers across the board, whether in Arizona, across the country, 9/10 of the politicians holding office would not be where they are today.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, Edmund Richard.
Good day, board members, Dr. Creekard. Dr. Creekard, don't take this personally, but many people in the community think you're the best thing since sliced bread. Unfortunately, to me, as a parent, that bread is a little old. Not in your age, but in your reaction to the issues. Nancy Cantor mentioned the CSI effort. Well, we're in year 3, and it is 3 letters. You mentioned that Coronado was in trauma and other harsh things, and I know you're slowly rolling things out. And as Jeff Gadd said, and board member Greenberg over there said, it's like, we need to be really conservative on how we spend our money. You just lost an entire elementary school, 682 kids. How conservative do we have to be? Are you guys going to do anything? Because as Nancy Cantor mentioned, we have Tonalea's K-8. You know what that says to the community? Those kids go there. It's not equitable. It almost smacks of segregation. But you guys have absolutely no plan how to move forward. I understand I can wait. And I've been told that for over a decade. Enough waiting. Enough with this, SUSD is a bank, we're going to hold on to this money. You know what you guys should do? Hey, look, Coronado, its attendance is, way down. We have space. We're going to set up a junior high school. Do you know why? Because we have faith in this community. If you don't do that, you know you're telling me and the rest of the community, we're willing to sacrifice that part of the community for the whole. But for how long? For how many more years are you going to lose an entire elementary school's worth of kids before you guys realize the district's on fire and changing wiper blades in a car? It's like, oh, we can do this, we can survive. You're not. Dr. Creekard, you will retire. Someone else will take your place. These board members will change. But I can guarantee you, or I should probably bet all of you, in 5 years, will Tonellia K still exist, or you guys can finally give them an equitable education solution? Are we going to still have Coronado? Because in 5 years, according to the Applied Economic Study, we're not going to have enough kids to hold open this high school. What's your plan for that? Plan is not a bad four-letter word. Use it. Oh, and by the way, the combination of Yavapai and Hohokam, the heave-ho plan as I call it, someone needs to stand up and say, this is why we're doing it, I own it, I'm going to make this very public why we're doing it. Because until you do that, you're going to heave-ho an entire district. And that is very sad. Thank you.
Okay, Melinda Gulick.
Good evening, President Beckman, members of the school board, and Superintendent Creekard. I, too, am a full-time product of SUSD, a 12-year attendee, and had the pleasure of going there when Dr. Creekard was here before, so we're so happy to have you back. I am a longtime volunteer for SUSD and have been involved for many years on the Yes to Children Committee, volunteering here and there since 1999. Long before I was the parent of a kindergartner and a future preschooler. I'm here to ask the board to commit to the rebuild of Kiva and Pueblo for the complex, for the community, and for the neighborhood. Kiva is my neighborhood school. We moved from North Scottsdale for Kiva, and because of unsteady leadership at the school and a concern about the future of the facility, we open enrolled at Cherokee. And I'm sure there are other families making similar decisions. We're happy at Cherokee and will be staying. Follow through on the commitments made to the community during the bond election. Commit to the complex, the community, the neighborhood, the families, and the students, current and future. Move forward with the rebuild of Kiva and Pueblo. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Chris Ambry.
Good evening. My name is Chris Ambry, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here as a proud, tired but proud 8th grade social studies teacher and president of the Scottsdale Education Association. A theme we return to often in my classes is those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. In other words, we should learn from our mistakes, and I always add from our successes as well. This is something that helps my students understand why we study our history and makes those connections that help them apply their learning to current events. Another old adage that I like to tell my kids is one of my favorites. It's not what happens to you, it's how you deal with it. My mother used to say that, and they're very useful words to live by. Although I do enjoy regaling others with my favorite quotes, there is a purpose to my message. Regarding the past, SUSD and SEA have had a long and valuable history of working together in the best interests of our district. As everyone involved has the same ultimate goal, ensuring that all individual learners reach their full potential, it's a logical and beneficial partnership. Regardless of membership, SEA represents all of the teachers who are in our classrooms every day. Having an association that provides knowledgeable, informed, professional educators to collaborate with district leadership bridges that gap between the ultimate decision makers and those teachers, individuals who are acutely aware of the pertinent issues facing teachers and students daily. When the professional association has members present at collaborative processes, these members are there to represent all teachers, have received input about what those teachers feel is best for their students, and have been a part of an organized system of communication across the district. These are the professionals who are willing to learn more about how our district operates and to put in those extra hours for the benefit of all. An educator who has chosen not to become an active participant in their association then represents only him or herself and comes with no knowledge of how our teachers and students are faring district-wide. As for my mother's words, what happened was this. As an association, SEA was suddenly stripped of all rights, no longer able to have open communication with our members on campus, no longer able to collaborate with district leadership, no release time for the president, which has always been a large part of how we've been able to keep that positive information and communication flowing. How we've dealt with it. We've continued to advocate for our teachers and our students, continued to work with district leadership when we're able, all with a focus on moving the district forward in a positive manner. And still, we have yet to be reinstated as the representative voice in the district. There's much more to be said about this, and it will. But as we gather at the last governing board meeting during this school year, I would be remiss if I didn't ask again for the reinstatement of our TEA and full recognition of the Scottsdale Education Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, Michelle Brierton.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Creekard and Sandra. My name is Michelle Brierton. I am the PTO president over at Kiva Elementary. I'll keep it short and sweet. To say that we were disappointed after the outcome of April's board meeting would be an understatement. The Kiva community has continually been pushed off. It is my hope that discussions that you say you need to happen sooner rather than later. Kiva is a standout asset that deserves the attention and commitment of a rebuild. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan Picasso.
Thank you, President Beckman, board members, Dr. Creekard and Sandra. Here we are again. Hi. Hey, would you please rebuild Kiva? I feel like we tell our kids all the time, if you ask nicely, maybe it'll happen. I'm be honest, I was coming in a little hot with the speech I wrote. I'm going to put it down because Dr. Creekard makes me laugh, and so I've softened a little bit. But you guys, we're really happy with the way things are going, generally speaking. We see a turn. All of you have gotten emails from me, and most of you have been kind enough to respond to them. I don't really know what else to say. We ask, and we show up, and yeah, not everybody speaks, not everybody's a loudmouth, but what do? I feel like the most concrete thing we can do is put families in the school, and we've done that. Why are we not even being discussed? Why is it being tabled? What's going on? It's so frustrating. I mean, you've got an incredible group of people, parents, community that there are not hustlers like the Kiva families. It's just a fact. We do what you ask. We will continue doing that. And please don't take that to mean, well, look, you've put families in a facility that's run down, so it's all good. Could you imagine what we could do? Come on, I'm at a loss. I don't know how many times to say it. I'll say it till I'm Kiva blue in the face, but rebuild Kiva. Talk about rebuilding Kiva. You guys, just rebuild Kiva. It's time. It's time. We got to do it. What do you need from us? We're here. Ask us. Reach out. More people, done. But it's time to rebuild Kiva. And thank you. It's time to rebuild Kiva. Let's rebuild Kiva.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, Mike Norton.
Okay, that was for luck. I hope it wasn't part of my 3 minutes. Two of my favorite principals on the face of the earth are here tonight, and I really love the fact that Grace Dombrace is still here and Margaret Stern is here. I've had the privilege of spending a lot of time, let me back up, just so the videotape knows who I am. I'm Mike Norton. I've had 8 kids, 5 of them attended Scottsdale schools, including 8 schools and 3 high schools. I served on the budget committee of 2012 and 13. I remember precisely about the slush fund. I remember the budget cuts we had to make. I remember the pain, and we were only trying to cut $4 million out of that budget, and we failed. We failed to sustain the operation of the district on a $4 million number, not $6.5 million. At the time, we weren't suffering massive losses of enrollment. We were just getting whittled and chipped away at. And that next year, when we shut down K-5s, we lost 1,000 kids. And we lost $8 million a year, and we lost the confidence of voters. That pain was really tough for the entire community. For the teachers that are out here that had to go through lateral pay suspensions, for the budgets that got cut, for the textbooks that got older, for that Honda Civic in the back of the parking lot that had to go 1 more year on bad tires, that was a really bad time. And it was really difficult for me because I'd been a parent who had brought my kids to Scottsdale Unified when it was still funded reasonably well. I took my kids to Copper Ridge in 2002. We had money for special education. Our staff was pretty happy. We had some problems, but we were okay. I came back in 2002 with my little 4-year-olds and walked them into pre-K at Copper Ridge thinking it's the same school, it'll be fine. And it wasn't. We were losing state funding. The teachers knew we had problems. There was this really sad gray fog hanging over the school. They were worried. We knew we had an override coming up. We knew we had a recession that was about to hit. We were fearful that we were going to lose, and we did. And then we tried to figure out how to balance that budget. And it was a miserable time. My daughters will have lived and attended Scottsdale schools during the 13-year period of the worst funding in the history of the state. You know, and perhaps that was meant by karma. It was a smack to me, shut up, right? But our schools don't need that. And our teachers don't need that. And it's really difficult for me to believe that we would even think for one moment that perhaps we wouldn't let voters make the decision whether we want our tax to remain in place. If it doesn't remain in place, the override will phase out in my daughter's junior year at Chaparral, and I will have tried my best to get this district funded during the period, and I will have failed. You know, it's a community failure. Please just let us have the chance to pass the override. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Representative Aaron Lieberman.
Good evening, President Beckman, Superintendent Creekard, members of the board, and everybody in the audience. It's great to be here. I'm first and foremost here as a parent. As many of you know, I have a son who's completed 3 fabulous years at Kiva and has had some of the best teachers I've ever seen really make a transformative difference in his life. So I come at SUSD first and foremost as a parent. I'm also a member of our legislature. I serve down at the Capitol representing Legislative District 28, and serve on the Education Committee. I've been trying to get to every school district in LD 28 and just give a brief update on the big things that came through the legislature so far up to this point and what might happen. So I thought I'd do that at your last meeting of the year. I think there's a couple of things that will kind of now be passed to the school boards as they pass out of the Capitol. The first and foremost concerning teacher evaluation, which we passed a bill that would allow school boards to really determine the percent of the evaluation up to 25%, so a lower percentage than it's been previously. And I think most importantly, let school boards determine what should be in that quantitative portion of the evaluation. Hopefully this will give you all the flexibility you need to resolve the Group B teacher issue of not having teachers evaluated by data that was not at all relevant to their task load. I was actually also pleased to get that bill amended so it applies equally to charters all across the state. So yeah, I think that's a very good result. A little tweak, and I had the benefit of conferring with Dr. Creekard on many of these as we came before Education Committee. I would give him a call. We also relaxed the requirements for instructional hours for middle school in 7th and 8th grade. There was an an odd spike in that, which will hopefully give you all more flexibility. You don't have to do anything different, but if you want to, you're certainly welcome to. Lastly, a few people are starting to tune in. We're about to do the budget. Last week, we released our House Democratic budget, and the biggest single thing we're fighting for is a full restoration of district additional assistance. That's for me personally, and I know for my colleague Kelly Butler, and I'm sure for Senator McGee as well, the very, very top of our list is trying to get as much money back to our schools as possible. It's so critical when you look at all of the challenges that we're facing. So many of them come from the simple fact that we're still hundreds of millions of dollars behind where we were a decade ago, and we will be down there and hopefully see some good results in the budget process for that. Lastly, I will just say I personally, as a citizen, look forward to putting my Pass the Override sign in my front yard like I did last time, and you'll have my full support and anything I can do to help on that. So thank you for all you do, and appreciate your service. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, Bert Taveld.
My name is Bert de Velde. I did not complete my homework. I'm sorry, but I have to say I assigned the homework to myself. But still, I did not complete my homework. Anyway, I decided to speak today because I cannot let some fantastic students graduate without recognizing their great work to say thank you. I'm referring to robotics mentors. High school students who, in addition to their heavy schedules of competing in their own competitions, committed themselves to mentoring teams at our middle schools and elementary schools. Many of these teams would not have been started or would not have enjoyed their successes without these mentors. Thank you on behalf of these schools. My homework was to get a complete list of students and have their leaders be recognized by name. At this moment, the risk of forgetting anyone weighs too heavily, so I'm leaving it at this. Thank you, mentors. Tireless coaches who showed up on Friday afternoons at my school, Mojave, or at the other schools throughout the district. You know who you are. Thank you. I encourage the high school principals to find a way to recognize these champions around graduation celebrations. Our robotics programs are amazing and continue to grow. I have concerns too, as you know very well, and I hope that one day soon these will be addressed. Let's leave it at this. Our programs function at professional levels. The leaders of these programs need to be treated as professionals, not just applauded as de facto volunteers, as still is the case in my humble opinion. Which in closing brings me to one person. I do want to say thank you to one person. I was unable to attend the Saguaro celebration this past weekend to speak there, so please allow me to do this in public. Thank you, Susan Lindberg, coach for the SaberCats, for the exceptional commitment to our Saguaro teams these past years. You are simply amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we move on now to our consent agenda. I move to approve our consent agenda without item F, personnel action item, or item N, which is the authorization to award Coronado High School Carlisle Roof Warranty Replacement Project. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Perleberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I pulled personnel action item F from the consent agenda because apparently Tenley Oberhaus from Ingleside is not resigning. In fact, she's still employed by SUSD. So I move that we approve this modification. Okay. Go ahead. Approve the personnel action item as modified, right?
So moved.
Okay. Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Board Member Beckham. Glad she's staying, yes. Board Member Beckham had asked to pull consent agenda item N, the authorization to award Coronado High School the Carlisle Roof Warranty Replacement Project. Board Member Beckham?
I pulled this item because there were still some outstanding questions regarding the solar contract and how it relates to the new agreement that is being requested. So I'm requesting that we go into an exec session to discuss. So that's...
I'll second.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
She,
Yeah.
okay. I said did I do it correct?
No, yeah.
Move to go into executive session. I moved to go into, well, I said I pulled the item in because there were some questions regarding the solar contract and how it relates to the agreement that is up for approval. And I understand the attorney's here, so I am moving that we go into exec session for some legal advice.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Board Member Greenberg, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will now convene an executive session at 6:32 PM. I move to adjourn our executive session at 7:05 PM. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Perleberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Executive session is adjourned. We are now reconvening our regular meeting at 7:05 PM. Do I have a motion to approve the authorization to award Coronado High School Carlisle Roof Warranty Replacement Project?
So moved.
Board Member Greenberg moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Okay, did we move on now to our action items?
Excuse me. President Beckman, if I may, I apologize to people in the audience and to the board. I was slow on the draw. After the personnel items were approved, I wanted to point out 3 administrative hires that we have made. I don't have all that, and I don't have all the information with me. That you approved with that agenda, and I would like to introduce the members to the board. First of all, as the Director of Gifted Education, you have just hired Karen Brown, who Karen is here, and if you would please stand. Karen is a graduate of Northern Arizona University, and with her master's degree from Arizona State University. She comes to us from Paradise Valley School District, where she is the gifted program mentor. And for your edification, just so you know, Karen has spent her whole career in gifted education, and we are very, very happy to have Karen joining us in July 1. Thank you, Karen, and welcome. Secondly, you have approved the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Tim Fountain. Tim, if you would please stand. Tim is also a graduate of NAU, both for his BS and his MA, and also for his PhD in educational leadership. Tim has been a principal currently in Higley District, and previous to that in Washington District, and an assistant principal also at Mesquite Junior High in Gilbert. Congratulations, Tim, and we look forward to working with you and joining our educational services team. Thank you. And we have Aaron Scherer, who is going to be the director, new position, Director of Career Technical Education. Erin comes to us from Paradise Valley District, where she was a dean of students, but prior to that time, she spent her career in Minnesota, Rochester, Minnesota. She has an undergraduate degree and her master's and school counseling license, all from University of Minnesota. Go Gophers! And also she has an ed specialist degree in school administration from the University of St. Thomas. We're so glad to have you here, Erin, and in this new position, and we are excited for furthering our career technical education to be even more important to our schools than it is now. But congratulations and welcome. And last and certainly not least, you approved the transfer, and I really believe a promotion, although there's no more single important position in the district than that of the principalship, I believe, because of what they do for instruction. But Margaret Cerna has been transferred from the principal at Tavan Elementary School to Executive Director of Title I for the Title I schools. She had asked me at one point this year if sometime near the end of her career, if she could share her expertise with other Title I principals to help them do for their schools what she has done for Tavan. And lo and behold, that opportunity became available. I went back to her, and she agreed. We are so excited to have Margaret leading our Title I schools and coaching the principals to take those schools to the next step. Congratulations, Margaret. We're glad to have you here in the district office leadership team. Thank you for that forbearance.
Sure. Welcome and congratulations. Okay, we now move to our action items. First up, A, approval of the recommendation for the architectural services for Hohokam Elementary School, SPS. Are there any questions or discussion on the recommendation for architectural services for Hohokam Elementary School?
SPS Plus.
SPS Plus. Board Member Beckham.
I just kind of want to follow through on what, I am wondering if you could provide us the rationale for the recommendation of this award.
Be happy to. Madam President, members of the board, following the process the board previously approved by using Mojave, this is one of those 4 architects that you blanket approved. We have so far recommended Orcutt Winslow for Cherokee and now SPS Plus for Hohokam. They were interviewed, secondly interviewed, they have been interviewed once, now twice, by an interview committee consisting of myself, Mr. Rayler, the principal at Hohokam, and Dr.
Hagiga.
Thank you. And basically, they have done a lot of major projects. There's a couple of gentlemen here representing the architectural firm. They are very qualified, and so we felt that they would do a fine job. The principal was very satisfied with them in terms of their approach to the project, and so we are looking forward to having a good project with them. So that's the process. In other words, screened twice, interviewed twice, so they have been vetted quite a bit in the process that we have used.
Well, as part of what on the rationale, I meant, why did you pick this architect over another one? What did you see as being the fit for this architect to Hohokam?
That's a good question. We picked them because of their full school building and remodeling experience, not smaller projects, but fairly major projects, and they'll identify what those are. And so we felt that they were quite capable of doing Hohokam. So that was one of the major criteria. Have you had experience, recent experience, in doing full schools? And the answer was yes.
And I'll just ask, one of the things that they'll be providing is the feasibility study. Do they have experience in feasibility studies?
Yes, I believe that they do, yes. They have that experience.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Greenberg.
I withdraw any request to speak at this time.
Any further questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve action item 13A, the recommendation for architectural services for Hohokam Elementary School, SPS Plus?
So moved.
Board Member Greenberg makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Board Member Perleberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, moving on to action item 13B, the approval of construction manager at risk, CMAR, contract for Cherokee Elementary School. Are there any questions or discussion on the approval of construction manager at risk contract form for Cherokee Elementary? Board Member Beckham.
I believe when we talked about this, was it at an information meeting, I believe in March? I just wanted to make the board members aware that this contract form is different from what we've had in the past pre-construction forms, and that this particular form includes construction services. And the board has, I don't know, reserved the right, but if they are not satisfied with the GMP, then they don't have to use that GMP, and then you can put it out for bid for other contractors. In the past, there was a section, well, it wasn't in the pre-construction, there was a section for the dollar amount for construction services, and I didn't see it in this form. Is at what point is the cost of construction services going to be negotiated and put in writing?
Are you speaking of pre-construction or construction?
Well, this now is this is a combined
Yeah.
services.
But the dollar amount that you're referring to?
The dollar amount, so what we had before is even in the pre-construction, there was a clause that showed what the construction costs were going to be, and it is not in this particular document. And then it was also, then when we had the construction contract, it was stated in that. And since this, as I understand it, will be, if we accept the GMP, this will be the construction contract. We will not have another document. So at what point is the price for construction services negotiated? Or do we need to add it to the form?
The construction price will be inserted in the contract once the board approves the GMP, if the GMP is acceptable to you. That's the process, I believe, Jennifer?
That there's two prices, and some of them are embedded within the body of this contract. For instance, the board has already approved and accepted that the construction manager at risk will, the cost for the pre-construction services will not exceed 0.7% of the guaranteed maximum price. So that's on page 59 of the agreement. The entirety of the guaranteed maximum price has to be approved by the board for the construction project itself.
Okay, so, well, I'm just saying, what we had done in the past is that there had been those fees had been predetermined for the construction. So what you're telling me is that even though we'll have this contract, all those costs will be negotiated when the GMP is being negotiated?
No, you have already negotiated that cost as well.
The pre-construction is
So
done.
can we put those in? Should they be in an addendum or an exhibit to
So
show
the
what they are?
pre-construction contract price is in the agreement.
I'm talking
and
about
the
construction costs.
price should be in the agreement as well.
Okay,
So I can
just
try
let
to
me know
locate
what
it for
page.
you. Okay.
Then you reminded me, Exhibit J was not included in the information that we got. There was the Exhibit J, but it wasn't filled out, which was to give us the dollar amount, I assume, that the pre-construction services would be up to, because we had approved that, but it wasn't in the document we saw. So I just wanted to verify the
So
wording in Exhibit J.
So I'm going to, none of the exhibits have been added to the contract form. We just have the contract form. So that's correct. The Exhibit J is the pre-construction cost summary, which may not have been developed yet by the construction manager at risk. I don't know what stage they're at. So, but many of these exhibits are items that would be added on. So for instance, the guaranteed maximum price is also an exhibit that has not been developed yet.
Okay. The pre-construction services, as I understand it, when we approved it, was the 7%, but it was up to $140,000. So that should be in that contract. So I just want to make sure that that dollar amount is in there, so all of a sudden it doesn't get inflated or change.
We'll make sure that's the case. They already have a purchase order and so forth, but we will make sure that it's in the contract, and you're correct, those dollar amounts were approved by the board.
Okay, and then I guess the difference also in this contract will be that the construction costs, because there are some definite percentages, will not be in this construction contract. It will be part of the negotiation of the GMP, so we just have to be very aware of the fact when we approve the GMP.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm going to go back and find the paragraph that you're looking for. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay. I looked through this contract and read it, and I just want a little clarity. It's my understanding that Mr. Gadd, as our CFO, and outside counsel, Ms. Guston Rosenfeld, basically, are taking ownership of reading and understanding and making sure that all the points in the contract are usual and customary in this field. And furthermore, that this contract represents the best interest of SUSD. So that you are the point person with Guston Roosevelt,
Yeah.
correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, any further questions? Nope. Okay. Then, do I have a motion to approve action item 13B, the approval of construction manager at risk, CMAR, contract form for Cherokee Elementary?
So moved.
Board Member Greenberg makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on to action item C, approval of the Coronado Success Initiative contract addendum for certified staff members. Are there any questions or discussion on the approval of the Coronado Success Initiative contract addendum for certified staff members? No questions? Okay. All right. I move to approve action item 13C, the approval of Coronado Success Initiative contract addendum for certified staff members. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Greenberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Or, okay, you're an aye? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, moving on to action item D, approval of revised insurance trust agreement. Are there any questions on the approval of the revised insurance trust agreement? Board Member Greenberg.
Yeah, I was just curious, the trust in handling these assets and selecting insurance and all that, I mean, who is ultimately responsible, for example, if, I'm not saying this has happened, but if there's an issue with the insurance, if there's a bad faith claim or something that needs to be, investigated, who, is it the district? Is it the governing board that ultimately reviews that, or is it our trust which handles these assets that are doing that, or is it, okay. So
Normally, it would be the trust.
It'd be the trust.
And they would commission a private legal counsel, whatever was necessary in order to investigate whatever the claim was.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Board Member Beckham.
I have been reviewing this trust and trying to get a full understanding of not only the trust existing trust, but then the amended trust, and then how the medical insurance merges into the trust. Started with when we were notified on 1/29 back in January that this was a recommendation, and I have been with Sandy Kravitz asking questions, and on May 1st we had a meeting, and what we discovered is that there was some incomplete financial statements and meeting minutes. There's still not a complete understanding of the investment accounts and an accurate rate of return on those investments over the last 5 years. Something else that I had mentioned was that I'd really like to get a better understanding of the actuarial account on the dollar amount that should be held in trust for the 3 different insurance programs, so that we know what is needed to adequately cover costs and potential liability. I'd also like that same accurate account for these programs, that if there is any of those expenses that if they aren't covered, that there are additional funds, and what those funds could be used for before we merge these accounts. And then I'm also have been asking for the past year and haven't really gotten the reports that are generated by Ashton Tiffany, so that I could have a better understanding of the medical insurance program and that business arrangement. So I feel that until we really get answers and we get that information, that we should not move forward with this trust tonight, that we should table it. And I've talked, Board Member Kravitz and I met with Dr. Creekard today, and he feels, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we will be able to get some of this information so that we can move this along, that we're not trying to slow this process down, we're just trying to gain an understanding so that all the board members have the information to be able to make an educated decision.
I have a question. So are we discussing the medical portion currently? Is that what you've been asking for documents regarding?
Both, actually, both. Both the existing trust and the new
Okay.
asset.
So we've been provided with some, though. The trustees have been provided with some documents as it relates to an audit and the financial statements of the regular trust and then of the Wells Fargo medical account, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking for further information regarding going.
We don't have, as I see it, a complete accurate account for the financial statements that we have been given for 2017. I would like to, and we're going back, let's see, that's 6/30 of 2017. So we don't have an accurate account of today or even back till 6/30 of 18. We don't have a clear understanding because we haven't been given the bank statements for the investment accounts on the return of investments the past 5 years. And all this information should be available. So that's what, it's not that we're asking for something that, you know, the 6/30 audit's going to be a little bit more difficult, but at least I would like to have an answer of when that would be completed now that we're 9 months out. But the bank statements, the banks keep those, so we would like to see the bank statements so that we can, if we need to do it, at least we can figure out an accurate rate of return before we just step into, you know, changing this whole trust. I think that there has been a change of administrators within the district. The individual that handled the trust and kind of was the leadership of the meetings by providing the information on claims and what the premiums were. We're still looking for all of that information. And we believe it will be available. We just need to find it.
Okay, Board Member Greenberg.
I think those are, you know, good points. I guess my question would be, do those points exist regardless of whether we change? Because we're not really changing the entirety of the structure here. We're incorporating a new account, and we have made some amendments, which I think were well thought out. But the issues on ROI and accounts and everything, those exist now and would exist regardless. So do those requests that you've put in, which are full, you know, they're understandable requests, do those actually directly, in your mind, hold this process up?
Yes, they do, because I do believe that there is a possibility we may not get them if we go ahead and we pass this. We've been asking since the beginning of February, and we found out new information on May 1. And we have a history of sometimes asking for information, and then we do not receive it. And I think it's mostly important, not so much because of the existing trust, it's because we are merging a medical self-insured trust of $27 million into this, and I'm not comfortable doing that without having all the information and having the original trust be in order.
Board Member Greenberg.
So it is, in your mind then, the argument is because it doesn't seem like we have a handle on the one, or maybe even both, if we combine them, then those issues could be exacerbated and make it.
We just
yeah,
don't know.
we don't know, but it could be exacerbated and more problem. Okay, thank you.
Board Member Kravitz.
I just wanted to let you know that I did get a thumb drive with some of the statements that I requested just this evening, so.
This evening, okay, good.
Okay. Board Member Perleberg.
Thank you. I always try and ask this question just to confirm, and to administration, Mr. Gadd or Dr. Creekard, in postponing this decision, are there any deadlines, consequences, dates that we're bundling up, that we should be aware of those consequences if we postpone this?
We have no insurance coverage that's been bound for next year beginning July 1. We have held off doing that, waiting for this trust to be formed and the trustees who administer it. We have no We have not approved anything with the Arizona Risk Retention Trust for either workers' comp or property casualty, nor have we signed an agreement with KROS relative to medical insurance effective July 1. That all was, and as you can see in the agenda item, there was a date that was selected of June 20th for the first meeting of this new trust to make those decisions, so they weren't made separately in any fashion. We wanted that new trustee group to be sure that they were on board day one with what the coverages were, what the prices were for the coverages, et cetera, including the banking arrangement. So we've held off doing a lot of those administrative things, and in this particular case, we need to take action on these insurance coverages. We don't want to start July 1 without having bound coverage. That would be the worst thing that we could do.
That would be catastrophic, it sounds like. But, so June 6th, I'm just looking at next board meetings, it maybe puts some decisions kind of under the gun, but it doesn't postpone any critical meetings in setting things up before July 1, is that?
That's correct. And on June 11th is the selection of trustees. I mean, that one is necessary because we have this new trust board, and we will have to have you make a decision as to who the trustees are.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's some things that need to be done, and, you know, they need to be dealt with fairly soon.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Board Member Beckham.
After reading this document, though, and knowing that we have the existing trust in existence, that hasn't changed. So this should not be prohibiting the administration from moving forward on any of those decisions.
It would prohibit moving forward on medical, since that's not included in the other trust, as you know. So,
right, but we make those decisions on medical through a insurance committee that's still in existence.
And the insurance committee doesn't make decisions. The insurance committee
Well, they
makes
make a
recommendations.
recommendation, right.
You know.
So I guess this moving, I understand the need, but this new document does not change how the administration is going to be changing, moving forward with those insurance
This trust,
companies.
This trust does not differ from any trust I'm aware of, and Ms. Noyes can respond to that. You know, I've been self-insured for 25 years in 4 or 5 districts. The trust documents are pretty much all mirror one another. And as long as the trustees feel satisfied that they're getting the report information that they need to perform their fiduciary responsibility, and the district takes advantage of a trust in terms of interest earnings primarily and some other things, that's basically, we're looking at a vehicle here that's required by law, and it has stipulations in it, and has an attorney who has drafted it that's familiar with what those stipulations are. I think we've been at this for 3 or 4 months now. I think we need to make a decision about moving this trust forward. I mean, we could, as Ms. Perlberg has said, we could just, postpone it, but I really think we need to get on with getting this thing done. That's my personal view.
Right. And I respect that, and thank you, but I just want to make the point that having this move forward does not prohibit the district from moving forward on making the decisions you just said were so necessary to
Other
make.
than medical insurance, we would have to determine how you would want to make that decision. Medical insurance is not a decision that can be made by the prior trust board because it wasn't included within the trust.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it can be made just as it isn't included in this trust, just as we've done the past 20 years.
Well, and the investment of
And
those
that's-
funds and so forth, I mean, unless this board wants to take on the responsibility of making those administrative decisions that logically would be the trust board, then we can function that way.
Why
But they
would it change from what we did last year? If we're not changing anything right now,
Well, as you
why
know,
would it
that
change?
we're changing the investment location. We're changing how we invest funds and what limitations there are around those. There's a different investment agent involved with Wells Fargo. There's more of those changes that are necessary, I think, in order to make this a functioning trust. The old trust document leaves a lot to be desired with what it says, as you probably know, and you've probably read it. Ms. Kravitz knows, I mean, that is not a document that you would want to do a lot with because of just what it doesn't have in it. So I hesitate to run property casualty and workers' comp, especially since workers' comp is going to be proposed to be self-insured. I hate to run that through a trust that has an adequate trust document, in my opinion. So it's to you.
Board Member Greenberg.
I think the answer is that it will be, but there are also changes, and it might just be easier. I think a lot of your concerns, and they're obviously, I think we echoed the same ones at the last meeting. I think it could have more to do with ensuring we have, good trustees on the trust board and dealing with that. And I don't know if that's,
No, that's not the issue.
The trustees have been there for quite some time.
well, but it sounds like there are a lot of issues. I don't really know.
The issue
Issues
is
with the trust
is in the administration that it appears, I learned today, and I don't know this for a fact, because this is what we've been trying to do, is piece this
Right.
together with bits and pieces of information. But the keeper of all that information was an employee, and they're trying to locate that information so that we can have the information that was presented at each one of these trustee board meetings. That's just one component of it. I named off 5 things that we
Right.
really need to know before we move forward with this.
But I would just, my only comment is if these are problems that are endemic, and that one, in part,
They
that's
may-
caused, no, but what I'm saying is that they may or may not be, but what I'm trying to say is, if the current trust document is inadequate, and the issues we have, I'm just saying, just for the sake of this, and these issues, ultimately, just like as we are responsible, right? So are these trustees and so on. So all I'm trying to get out is, we don't know where those problems may lie, but I think what the administration is trying to say is that by moving to this new trust document, which would include medical insurance, which is in line with what, the rest of the districts that are self-insured in the state do, that's a better starting point for addressing these issues, I think, is in starting there. Because I don't know if spending the time to really dig through things rather than start fresh and with these stricter auditing parameters and the reports to the governing boards, I don't know if that makes more sense, and then fixing those items moving forward rather than halting this process. Not that that's what the intention is. That's not the intention. I know that. And trying to peel back layers and layers and layers. We may never find those documents if they can't locate them from this specific employee. So that's my only comment on that.
So, Board Member Greenberg, and I think I understand what you're saying is you would hate to inhibit us from having future transparency because we lacked it in the past. Meaning right now, Mr. Gadd is trying to get his arms around this trust, and we have to be careful with the word combine, because all of these accounts are, my understanding, will be held in one institution, but in separate accounts,
that's
right?
correct.
So ultimately, the goal is to move them to one institution, have a new trust document, and right now, it's my understanding that the medical portion is sitting out there, and it's a considerable amount of money, and it's not invested, and it's not part of the trust. So ultimately, the goal is to move them to one institution and have them in separate accounts, have transparency with how much is in there, have the trustees approved, and develop an investment policy statement so that we can get this money invested per our liquidity needs going forward. Am I correct?
Yes.
And the sooner we do this, the better. I understand that we need this historical information, and I, of course, want to get it as much as we can. But I would like to see us do this sooner rather than later, because having this developed appropriately, I think gives our taxpayers the accountability and the transparency they've been asking for.
Okay, then I'll ask a question.
Okay. Board Member Beckham.
Mr. Gadd, what precludes our finance department from investing the medical insurance funds according to state statutes in which we can put it into fixed incomes of up to 5 years?
We have no authority to invest self-insured monies outside of a trust. There is no legal enabling statute to do that. And if we did have an enabling statute, that interest earnings is not spendable. It goes back to reduce taxes. That's the last thing I would recommend this board do. So that's the issue with the largest piece of this puzzle, is you're hamstrung with it not being inside a self-insured trust that gives you those capabilities. You just don't have enabling legislation to do it.
And so that the only thing that you can put the money in is a money market fund.
Well, I mean, you send it to the treasurer and hope that he puts it, you know, but again, once that interest earnings is produced by the treasurer, it goes back into the general fund and it reduces property taxes for the district. Much of a self-insurance advantage is taking those interest earnings and spending them on things that would help the district, especially in its upcoming M&O budget issues, rather than sending it back to a tax rate that's half of everybody else's. I mean, that's the bottom line.
And so, but what I heard is the urgency was not, part of it was that, but the other part was the fact, and that's what I heard was the louder part, but maybe just because it was mentioned first, was we would be unable to contract with our insured Kairos, and then also on the workers' comp side, those two insurance agencies also.
The Kairos medical side would have to be contracted by the governing board, because without it being inside a trust, there is no other board to
So
contract.
we just do it the way we've always done it.
Yes, and as I say, the end result is not what you would like. I'm trying to put all of this up front for a new trust board to start from square one and not have to deal with, well, the governing board this and the governing board that, and so they're partially dealing with some of these subjects that they should be dealing with from day one. And they're not, because that trust is not formed and available for them to understand what's going on July 1st. All these coverages need to be bound either the third or fourth week in June, or they will inform you don't have any insurance for next year. Now, we can kind of push things together and I guess try to get the old trust board together and all of that, but that's certainly far from ideal when we're dealing with, you know, the kinds of coverages that we are and the dollar amount involved. All we're simply trying to do is to put a trust together that every other single large to medium-sized district has. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to climb tall buildings at a single bound. I mean, this is not, you know, this is not in that category.
And so then I'll just go to one of my last concerns then is that in this document, and maybe it's something, is who is going to determine how those funds will be used? Does that need to have, that's just going to be the trustees who may decide on what the investment policies will be for the investment side?
Yes.
But what about for the funds that are not, that are available to use for the district?
The district funds will be contributed to the trust for them to cover those bills that they get from the carriers for those subjects we talked about. So whatever the budget amount is in the M&O budget for each of those three coverages, all would be contributed to the trust. The trustees will decide to spend it on whatever coverages they've chosen to approve for this coming year and invested whatever the current balances are in those three different accounts that we've talked about. So what we wanted to do is to make this process as clean as possible and having everything for them beginning July 1. They start from scratch and they understand everything that's expected of them, including reading the trust document and understanding what their role is. That takes, you know, we wanted to have some time to get that done before they had to move on with the July 1 date.
Well, I would still like to have the information, so I would like to table this for a June approval, if we can get all of that information together. I'd like to just put that on.
Are you making a motion?
Yes, I'm making a motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it for the vote.
Okay, all in favor? Board Member Greenberg seconds. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No. Opposed to table it, yeah, no.
Sorry.
Nay.
Nay.
Nay. Okay. Yep, okay. All right, I make a motion then to approve action item 13D, the approval of the revised insurance trust agreement. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Board Member Greenberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1.
And I think we can all add, Board Member Beckham, that we really do hope you get the information ASAP.
Yeah, no, and
There's a little pressure there on everyone from all of us as well.
Today we did commit to still having the meeting with the right people in the room to find the information that has been asked for, so that we have that. We will do that.
No,
Excellent.
I'd like to,
Thank you.
again, beat that meeting as well. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to action item E, approval for the SUSD Governing Board to submit its proposed priorities for Arizona School Boards Association, ASBA, 2020 political agenda. Are there any questions or discussion on the approval of the board to submit its proposed priorities for Arizona School Boards Association? Nope. Okay. Oh, Board Member Perleberg.
Thank you. So I'm just going to make a statement, and then I'm kind of done on this topic. So I hope my fellow board members can kind of understand that, yeah, there's no, it may not be as negative as it sounds. It's just, after being up here maybe as long as I've been, it's just where I feel we as board members need to stay in our lane. So I'm just going to make this comment and I'll be done. We have all watched over the years as our education community has become more and more painfully divided. Many of us cannot even agree on the reasons why, let alone the solutions. Our role as a governing board, however, is clearly defined, and that is why I am uncomfortable with this particular exercise that ASBA asks us to do. Do not misunderstand me. Individually, we board members can have powerful voices for public education, along with the training and support of ASBA. I am always proud to speak with our community on the initiatives, ballot measures, and various state legislators that I believe either positively or negatively impact our schools. And I can find a lot more than 5 items on this list presented by ASBA to support. Being asked, however, as a board to take action on an ever-growing list of complex and divisive issues, in my mind, not only threatens to fracture the community further, but more importantly, implies that we, the 5 of us, speak for our voters regarding these state education and budget priorities. I know we all hope our board actions influence, inform, and bring our community together in support of our schools, but the voters have a critical voice of their own at the state level and in the representatives that they elect. That is really the key to preserving public education in my mind. I believe governing boards best serve our constituencies by staying focused on our students and our shared goal of making our districts the best choice for all our families and being supported by our taxpayers. Our actions for our district define our priorities. If we are successful, voters send the message to our state capital, and we see the meaningful shift for quality education in Arizona we all want. Thank you for the opportunity to speak there.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Perleberg. Board Member Greenberg.
Thank you, Board Member Perleberg, for sharing that. I would just say that, we are members of ASBA. I mean, we voluntarily do this and are part of this. So I think it's appropriate for us to work with them, as we've said we would. And, the other thing is, we are elected, we're elected. We're elected by our community, and that is how democracies work. I personally don't think it's out of line for us to, take views that we believe are in the best interest of this district. And, I think a lot of us know the funding realities and everything. So that's all I'll say to that.
Any further questions or discussion? Board Member Kravitz.
So I went back and looked at our discussion from August of last year, and a couple of things came up that I thought were still germane. I think last year they didn't ask us to pick some bullet points. It was just you're approving the whole thing. But we discussed that, and I still believe that this is to be true, that our priorities are different than some of our neighboring districts and rural districts. So this exercise really, to me, accomplishes very little. And it was suggested last year we might be better off meeting as having board members meet with legislators directly to discuss what's important for our district. And that would actually be an exercise that ASBA could help facilitate. And another item we discussed was the accountability of ASBA. We vote on these ideas and issues, but nobody ever really takes stock of, well, was ASBA successful in any of their endeavors? So, I mean, we can do this if you'll feel good. As I've said before, I've gone down to the legislature when Scottsdale Parent Council used to go down there. I felt that was worthwhile because we were meeting one-on-one with our legislators. And I think writing our legislators directly is effective. As we all know, until things change at the legislature, I guess I'm not trying to sound like a Debbie Downer. I really don't anticipate much changing, whether we vote on these at the ASBA meeting or not.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? All right, I make a motion to approve the action item 13E, the approval for SUSD Governing Board to submit its proposed priorities for the Arizona School Boards Association, ASBA, 2020 political agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Greenberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Oh, I didn't get a chance to vote. Sorry, I'll go with aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-1 with Board Member Perleberg opposing. Okay, moving on to action item F, approval of proposed priorities for submission to Arizona School Boards Association, ASBA, for the 2020 political agenda. Mrs. Marshall.
Madam President, members of the board, our discussion last week, you were invited to send me or Sandra your proposed priorities. I received proposals from 4 of you, and I didn't want to presume to try to put them together. The main common theme that I noticed is adequate funding and fully funding kindergarten, a couple of you. There's items in here about the funding formula, but I'll just show you what I received from each of you. The first one, adequately and equitably fund district schools to at least the national medium per pupil funding. I think these were straight out of the ASBA bullet points. I don't want to presume and read these to you, but just to show you and our viewers what each of you kind of had in mind. Require public accountability for taxpayer dollars spent on education, improving outcomes for all students, preserve and strengthen local control. There's the fully fund kindergarten. I saw that a couple of times in what you all submitted. Adequate ongoing resources to ensure district equipment and facilities are maintained. Revise the finance formula as stated in the ASBA document. Establish financial and academic transparency for all. Require comparative classroom spending audits for school districts and all other institutions that accept public funds. Provide additional state funding for nationally competitive salaries to attract and recruit and retain talented teachers and staff. Revise the school finance formula, fully fund all-day kindergarten. Adequate ongoing resources. Changing the language in the override budget increase, language that we're required to put on our ballot if we do go out for an override. On this one, there were a couple of, the form, if you recall, had additional items for consideration, and This board member was the only one who added two there. And those were require public school districts to have an internal auditing department, as well as fully funding special education to allow public school districts to properly comply with federal and state requirements. And then finally, this last one showed the difference between what was being proposed and what was in the ASBA format, if I'm reading it correctly. Revise the financing formula, increase compulsory attendance age through the senior year of high school, restore ninth grade CTE JTED eligibility and funding, and require uniform and transparent rules regarding financing, budget reporting, and procurement purchasing practices for all public schools. So that is everything that I received from four of you.
So my understanding was, and it was a little bit confusing when we did this, is that we would submit our 5 and that we would kind of drill down into a cohesive top 5, and that would become our collective 5 to go to ASBA. So I don't see that we're particularly ready to do that, apparently, and maybe this item needs to be tabled until we can come up with that measure. You know, I don't know how my other board members feel.
Is there a deadline? You look like you're worried about it.
Oh, May 24th, okay.
Sure. Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you, Sandra. Sandra did a little bit of tallying of what you did. And again, as you see, there's a lot of different priorities here, but one that three of the four of you had in your priorities was the revising the school finance formula. So that's one that got 3 votes, so to speak. And then 2 of you supported the fully fund full-day kindergarten item. Not a majority, but again, just kind of giving you that feedback of what came out. Otherwise, you all had slightly different priorities that you identified.
Well, this poses kind of a conundrum here because you need 5 to move forward per the item. Board Member Greenberg, do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to submit all 5. So if we wanted to take a vote on the 2 that got the most, and then we could do that. I mean,
you can do that.
Obviously, we don't want to spend another 2 hours, discussing the minutiae of the different points and what does ASBA mean or what do we mean, and we might just say, hey, look, this is the process we had. We had a little bit of short notice, with the due date and everything, just so, we could do that if you guys wanted to. And then I don't know if anybody wanted to discuss, there were the additional items for consideration, or if we didn't want to deal with that at all. But up to you guys.
And you also can choose not to submit, although you just voted to submit. The way that we split this up was whether you want to submit something, the answer was yes. But now that you see what you all submitted, if you can't agree on something, and it was, asking for the board majority.
I think the language was a little bit cumbersome and confusing in the practice, to be honest with you. I don't know how my fellow board members feel about just submitting the top 2 as our priorities, because it seemed that as we submitted them to you, those were obviously the majority discussion or overlapping between all 5 of us.
Did only 4 people submit?
Yes, I only had 4 of the 5 of you submit, and these are the results from the 4. I don't have that document.
Okay, so it's the 24th. What from a, I'll ask Michelle. I'm sorry, what's our question? From a legal perspective, can you look at our submitted list and can we vote on, do the priorities as you see them have to be spelled out tonight, or is this an exercise that we can vote on the top 5 priorities submitted to you, or top 2, and then you can let us know what those were per your, or is that not acceptable? Meaning we vote on the with the priorities that, here tonight, that we've submitted to you, and then you define those priorities as we've submitted them already, or do we have to lay them out tonight?
You really need,
Okay.
I shouldn't take
Well,
that.
I mean, they're here, yeah, so
Yeah.
we're just doing a count.
So I guess the question is whether you want to submit the 2 that a number of you had in common, which would be the revising the school finance formula item and also the fully fund full-day kindergarten item.
I would say yeah. Okay. So I move to approve action item 13F, the approval of the proposed priorities for submission to the Arizona Schools Boards Association. Priority 1 being revising the school finance formula. Priority 2 being fully fund all-day kindergarten. Do I have a second?
Point of order, just a quick
As our
question.
priorities.
Are these, so I assume that will be it then, if we vote on this, just those 2, none of the other slots, nothing in the additional, just those 2?
Right.
Is everyone, okay. Am I allowed to second that motion now, or have I interrupted the?
Oh, you can second it if you want.
I will second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Did you say aye?
No, I did not say aye. I won't repeat my statements.
Okay,
But
no,
I
just wanted
refer
to make
to
sure
them.
you leaned
And
forward.
I will also just state, yeah, I love all-day kindergarten, and yeah, that funding formula needs a overhaul, but still I'm an A because of, again,
You
the
leaned forward,
process.
so I didn't know.
Thank you.
Okay, all opposed?
Nay.
You said
Nay,
nay?
yes.
Okay. So motion passes 4-1 with Board Member Perleberg opposed. Okay? All right. Moving on. Do we have any future items?
I got plenty.
Could, I would like to discuss our internal auditing policy at some point, and our internal auditing department.
Internal auditing department. Internal auditing policy.
Just the policy,
and
just the,
department.
yeah.
Okay, any others? Board Member Beckham.
I would like for an agenda item to be looked at is that because we are coming upon summer and all of a sudden school's here, and if we do a 60-day posting, I think that we need to start to look at the superintendent search. I know it seems like it's early, but when we backed into it, it actually wasn't. So whether we need to do that in June or if we can wait to August, but we may need to do it in June. We just need to look at it.
Okay. Any others?
I'll add one more.
Board Member Beckham?
Or did you have one? Were you going to? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt if you were. Oh, okay.
Board Member Greenberg.
I would like to maybe have an agenda item discussing our overall and future plans for the Coronado Complex Learning Community, and at some time, maybe just with the schedule and everything, that won't be, in the next 2 or 3 months, but if we could, I just want that put out there.
Okay.
Thanks.
If I may, that would certainly be something give us the summer for the planning with some new staff that we have on board and a little new structure in that area. I know that Principal Palatucci has been planning for next year, and for Coronado, we want to bring Margaret Cerna in with the elementary principals and all of that, and bring that together this summer in planning.
No,
So when school starts, we'll put it on. You bet. You bet. Thank you.
Board Member Beckham.
As a board member, I've been getting lots of emails, and we heard it in public comment about when the district leadership will be bringing the plan together for Kiva and Pueblo, and I'm just wondering if we can make sure that we have that on the agenda. Had mentioned it, we'd like it sooner than later, and I think we're hearing from our community that they would like to have that sooner than later, have that discussion.
So it was tabled, so that means it is on the list to be brought back. So it's just a matter of the board letting us know when they would like to have those items brought back. Because it was tabled, not defeated, so.
If I can add. I'm sorry.
Board Member Perleberg.
Thank you. I guess I want to clarify those statements because I know you've shared with the community that you're valuing that time for administration to put together all the information so that our conversation can be meaningful and productive and move us forward. I want the board to make sure you have that time as well.
Right. So yeah, so
I mean, we all want it sooner rather than later, but we want to have it.
Thank you. We would prefer that we have the beginning of school enrollment numbers, the achievement numbers from the summer, and all of that. So again, after school starts, but maybe mid to late August or early September, probably for that, when we'd have a good feel, not the first couple days of school, but when we really have a good feel for the enrollment and what it looks like and so forth, because I think that'll be crucial.
Okay. Board Member Beckham?
I would also like to see, since we're going to be having the first budget discussions, well, not the first, but budget discussions in June, looking for an approval, that we look at the cash accounts that we have and the funds that we have, and that if we can get some recommendations from administration, which I believe has to come from the superintendent, on where we can use some of that cash for our students this coming up year.
I'll second that idea.
I will as well, especially for marketing. I think we've all asked for that. So, okay. Any others? All right, let's move on to dates of upcoming meetings. Next one, Thursday, June 6, 2019, 3 o'clock, study session at the MDA. Tuesday, June 11th, 2019, 5 p.m., regular governing board meeting at Coronado. Do I have any governing board reports? Nope. All right, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Greenberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned at 8:07 p.m.